Listen, I'm going to tell you something that a lot of people will absolutely hate, but deep down they know it's true. Look around. Seriously, just look. What do you see? Men. Good men. Smart men. Successful men. Men who take care of themselves, work hard, look good, sitting alone. Not for a week. Not for a few months. 4 years. And before someone jumps in with the classic "men just don't want commitment," let me ask you a simple question. When was the last time you saw a truly happy couple under 35? Not a filtered Instagram story. Not a TikTok montage pretending everything's perfect. A real couple. Happy. Stable. Respectful. Growing together. Think. I'll wait. You can't remember, can you? And there's a reason for that, a reason nobody wants to talk about because it exposes the entire modern dating system for what it has become. A high-risk gamble with almost no reward for men. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine there's a casino table. And to sit down, you must bet. Your emotional stability. Your time. Your future income. Your peace. And your mental health. And the dealer calmly says, historically, 70% of players lose everything. The remaining 30%? Half of them say the prize wasn't worth the price. Would you sit at that table? Of course you wouldn't. No rational person would. But that's exactly how modern relationships look to the average man today. A massive risk. A tiny chance of real loyalty. And a culture that tells him everything is his fault, no matter what happens. You think I'm exaggerating? Let me give you something real. Last week I talked to my cousin. He's 34. Well-built. Financially stable. Confident. Stylish. The kind of man most women claim they want. He tells me, I haven't gone on a date in 3 years. 3 years. I ask why. And he laughs, not bitter, just tired. He says, every time I open a dating app, I feel like I'm applying for a job I'm automatically underqualified for. Minimum height 6 feet 2 inches. Minimum income top 5%. Must own property, travel the world, be emotionally available, be funny, be handsome, be exciting, be everything at once. Meanwhile, most profiles read like job descriptions with zero responsibility on their end. And he's not wrong. Because somewhere along the line, modern expectations stopped being let's build something together and became give me everything while I decide if you're enough. You know what I've learned? A lot of people confuse their desires with their value. They ask for standards they don't live by. They demand effort they don't reciprocate. They want commitment but offer instability. They want loyalty but keep backups. They want romance but bring entitlement. And when men finally step back and say, no, thank you, suddenly they're the problem. Let me tell you a story. When I was 22, I met a girl at a coffee shop. She worked retail, shared a tiny apartment with 3 other girls, barely had a few $100s to her name. And yet her dating requirements sounded like she was interviewing for a billionaire. The man needed his own home, a luxury car, international vacations, free time, endless attention, and the emotional capacity of a therapist. So I asked, calmly, and what do you bring to match all that? She looked at me like I asked her to solve quantum physics. She said, I'm the prize. The prize for what? Showing up? And the wild part? That wasn't uncommon. It wasn't rare. It wasn't shocking. It was normal. Today you have people who don't exercise demanding athletes. People drowning in debt demanding millionaires. People without basic cooking skills criticizing men for not being providers. People who treat relationships like business deals rather than emotional partnerships. When you build a game where only one side can win, the other side just stops playing. And men aren't stupid. We see the divorce cases. The custody battles. The alimony stories. The friends who give everything and get nothing back. The videos where someone brags about free dinners, free attention, free validation. So where did all the good men go? They went home. They went to the gym. To their careers. To their peace. To their hobbies. To friendships that don't drain them. To lives where effort equals reward. And that's the truth nobody wants to admit. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's real. But let me take this even further, because what I'm about to say is the part nobody wants to touch. Not men, not women, not therapists, not influencers. The truth is that modern dating isn't broken by accident. It's broken by design. We built a culture where people are taught to consume each other instead of connect. And no one feels the consequences of that more than men who spent years doing everything right only to be told it's never enough. Think about it. For the last decade, men have been fed the same message: improve yourself. Work harder. Make more money. Be kinder. Be emotionally intelligent. Be stable. Be strong. Be soft. Be funny. Be serious. Be everything. But while men were checking every box, the goalposts were being moved a mile forward every year. And you know what happened? Men adapted. Quietly. Invisibly. They realized something brutal. The reward for doing everything right is the same as the reward for doing nothing: disappointment. So they stepped back. Not because they're weak. Not because they're scared. But because they're tired of playing a game where the rules shift every 5 minutes. I talked to a guy recently, 31, handsome, successful, zero drama, discipline like a monk. He told me something that stuck in my mind like a knife. I stopped dating when I realized I was auditioning for women who weren't auditioning for me. That line right there? That's the entire state of modern relationships in one sentence. Men aren't choosing loneliness because they want to be alone. They choose it because, for the first time in history, loneliness gives more peace than dating does. Let me paint you another picture. A man goes on a date. He's on time, he pays, he tries to connect. But she spends the night scrolling, comparing him to filtered strangers online, mentally ranking him against imaginary men she believes she deserves because the algorithm told her she's a queen. He tries. She tests. He opens up. She judges. He compliments. She rolls her eyes. He pays again. She disappears. Tell me, how many rounds of that can a human being take? Men eventually reach a point where the math stops making sense. Investment high. Return negative. Risk insane. Reward unpredictable. That's not dating, that's gambling addiction disguised as romance. And here's what society refuses to admit. Men break quietly. Women cry loud. Men collapse in silence. When a man finally says "I'm done," understand something, he didn't say it lightly. He carried that decision through sleepless nights, through rejection, through disrespect, through years of feeling invisible. People say modern men lack courage. Wrong. Modern men lack reasons. Think about how different the world is now. Back then, you'd meet someone in your neighborhood, at work, through friends. You'd talk. You'd spend time. You'd build something that grew slowly but naturally. Expectations were realistic. People valued each other. Now, dating feels like a competitive sport with invisible referees and unfair scoring systems. A man can bring stability, loyalty, ambition, emotional support, and still lose to some dude with a nice jawline and a rented car who knows how to take a good selfie. And nobody asks how that affects the male psyche. Nobody asks what it does to a man's confidence when his entire worth is filtered through the lens of unrealistic standards he never agreed to. But the worst part isn't the standards. The worst part is the attitude behind them, the idea that men are lucky to be chosen, lucky to even be considered, lucky to receive crumbs of affection in exchange for full devotion. So what do men do? They step out of the arena. They choose silence over arguments, peace over chaos, growth over drama. They build businesses, bodies, bank accounts. They invest in themselves because that's the only investment that guarantees returns. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Men who choose solitude don't get weaker, they get stronger. They learn to cook. They travel alone. They sleep better. They work harder. They focus. They heal. They evolve. They stop chasing validation and start building identity. And once a man reaches that level of self-created peace, you can't tempt him with low-quality connection. He's already seen the cost. He's already paid the price. And he's not interested in re-entering a game designed for him to lose. People say men are lonely. But here's the truth. Men aren't lonely, they're selective. Pain teaches preference. Disappointment teaches boundaries. Peace teaches clarity. And that's why so many modern men walk alone, not because they can't find someone, but because they finally understood the oldest lesson in history. Not every person who wants your time deserves your life. But here's where everything flips, and this is the part most people refuse to swallow. Men didn't just walk away from relationships. They walked away from being the villain in someone else's story. For years, men were told they're the problem no matter what they do. Work too much? Emotionally unavailable. Work too little? Broke. Show feelings? Weak. Don't show feelings? Toxic. Pay for everything? A walking wallet. Don't pay for everything? Not a real man. It got to the point where every option led to blame. Every path led to criticism. Every choice led to being wrong. So men made a new choice. Silence. Distance. Peace. Because when a man finally understands that the world sees him as disposable, he stops offering himself to be thrown away. He stops auditioning. He stops proving his worth to people who don't even know their own. And that's when the real transformation begins, not the polished Instagram version, but the raw, brutal shift from I want to be loved to I will not be used. I talked to a guy recently, 29, solid career, quiet type. You know what he told me? The first night I slept in a clean room, with no one yelling, no tests, no guilt trips, no silent treatment, bro, I felt high. Like I breathed for the first time in years. That's what men are discovering, the freedom that comes after years of being judged for simply existing. And you can see it everywhere now. Men choosing gym over clubs. Men choosing business over chaos. Men choosing hobbies over heartbreak. Men choosing sleep over arguments. Men choosing themselves over people who never truly chose them back. And while men are rebuilding their lives, something else is happening on the other side, a panic nobody talks about loudly, but you can see it in every post, every rant, everywhere the real men comment online. Women are starting to realize that the men they ignored, mocked, or treated as options, aren't waiting anymore. The door they assumed would always stay open is closing. Slowly. Quietly. Permanently. I saw this with my own eyes not long ago. A woman in her mid-30s crying in a bar bathroom because the guy she rejected at 24 is now engaged, not to her, but to someone younger, kinder, happier. Her words? I thought he'd still be there. That sentence is the funeral of modern dating in one line. Because that's the lie so many believed. That men would always chase. That men would always come back. That men would always try harder. That men would always fight for attention, affection, validation. But guess what? Men stopped fighting battles that only injure them. And here's the plot twist that hits like a punch in the chest. Men didn't become cold, cruel, distant. They became logical. They became aware. They became selective. They started looking at relationships the same way they look at investments. If the risk is high and the returns are low, walk away. If the cost is heavy and the reward is nothing, walk away. If the energy you give comes back as disrespect, walk away. And for the first time in decades, men are not ashamed of walking away. But here's the part that nobody saw coming: the loneliness everyone said would break men. It didn't. It built them. Give a man silence, he becomes focused. Give him space, he becomes disciplined. Give him time, he becomes dangerous. Give him peace, he becomes unstoppable. And now, the same society that told men they're optional is crying because men finally believed it. They finally said, okay, if I'm optional, I'll act like it. And this is where it all lands. Men aren't choosing loneliness because they can't get women. Men are choosing loneliness because they refuse to lose themselves for someone who doesn't respect the man they are. So if you want to know why men are alone now, really alone, here's the truth no one wants to hear. They didn't run away from love. They ran away from being drained, dismissed, used, blamed, and replaced. They didn't choose loneliness. They chose freedom. And the real question isn't why men are choosing to be alone. The real question, the one that should scare society, is this. When men no longer need anything from the people who once controlled the entire dating market, what happens next? Because from what I'm seeing, the men walking alone today aren't sad. They're not broken. They're not lost. They're finally free. And for the first time ever, women are the ones who can't handle it.